I know you've answered some of this in the previous question, but what are the challenges these young people face?
Yeah, so I think there's an array of challenges. I'll kind of walk through some of the bigger ones. Being a young person, like all of us as young people, we were forming our identities, our sense of self. This is the time when our brains are pretty plastic. We are trying to figure out what our story is, who we are, all these kinds of things. And so one challenge that young people face is this is an event that's happening right in the thick of things there. And so one challenge is, how do they sustain a positive sense of self, and a sense of self that can help them get on with their lives and not develop identities and senses of self that work counter to that. So I think that identity piece is something that's not spoken about a ton, but I think it's quite important. People use terms like street entrenchment and that kind of thing to talk about young people kind of, taking on the homeless identity, if I could put it that way, or some iteration therein, and how hard it is to back out of that later on. But yeah, so that's one challenge. I mean, there's meeting the basics: survival, food, shelter, safety, those kinds of things. The amount of violence is profound that young people face when they experience homelessness: sexual, physical violence. And some of it is in the form of like literally, life-threatening events. And some of it's in the form of just daily ripoffs and hustles and intimidation. I mean, these sorts of things probably happen a lot more than the beatings and other forms of terrible violence that happen, but it's constant. And that really we found in our research that had a major impact. Even if you accounted for almost every other risk, violence in the streets carries just about the most weight in terms of a young person's thinking about suicide, overdosing on drugs, being in distress, all of these things. So violence is a key part of it, and trying to survive that. Seeking supports, it's tough. I mean, you will find supports with other young people who are experiencing homelessness, and those supports can be really important for people that understand the person, can provide emotional support, can be there, can provide protection at times. But at the same time, you're getting support from other young people who are also struggling a great deal. And it can be a bit of a double-edged sword. Sometimes the kind of support you might need from your friends is the kind of support that says, you're looking pretty terrible. I'm really worried about what you're using here and how much it's impacting you. I think, you need to get some help. You might not necessarily get that kind of support from other young people who are also struggling with the same addictions. And so finding who can be trusted, who can support. I mean, this is a challenge and many young people have had terrible experiences with providers, quote unquote, of various kinds and authorities of various kinds. So to trust and to go into agencies and organizations and trust people dressed like me with pieces of paper and computers and procedures where they've had bad experiences with that in the past, with with group interventions, all these sorts of things. I think that's a struggle. And then ultimately as well, finding, in the transition out is sustaining housing, finding employment, school, meaningful activities. All these are, these are major issues, because a young person, let's say they dropped out of school at grade 10, homelessness for a couple of years. And then it's like some stability comes around, some clarity of mind, maybe and some great supports and some good resilience. Now I want to get a job. I kind of want to pick up. I want to get my life going again. I mean, it's a heavy thing to suddenly realize I didn't finish high school. All of the people I knew back in the day, their lives have all taken off. They're off at university or they're doing whatever. And how the hell do I begin to figure out how to make up this lost ground? And, often we'll be sitting alone in some apartment someplace, and the world outside the windows is going by so fast. Is finding a way to try and join that. I mean, it can cause a lot of isolation and mental health challenges actually post-homelessness, to be in that frame, trying to figure out, where the person belongs and how they can, get their life started and get some money in their pocket and do meaningful stuff. So I'll stop there.